Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got episode 120 coming to you today.
That was my college dorm suite.
It really?
120.
Oh,
yeah.
no kidding. No kidding.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Is that where all
yes.
the chicks would show up late on a Saturday night? Was 120?
They weren't here for me, but yes.
You just opened the door for them. Come on in.
Come on in. Just stop by my room after you're done.
Yeah, just let me know when I can come back. Yeah, I get
That's
it.
right.
I get it. So episode 120, ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com. That is our website where we put all of our shows over on Spreaker. 978-751-DICE is the Dice line. 978-751-3423. Send us a text. We may not read those on the show. Email digitaltodice@yahoo.com. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. So a lot of fun things to talk about today. The topic today is going to be the fun factor, Ron. Yeah. We're going to talk about some of the fun things in games. And I know we've kind of gone over some of this before, but we had a couple things happen to us this week in the gaming world. We're going to talk about those and what kind of spawned this topic today. Mm-hmm. Before we get going, I guess we should... did we talk about Betty White yet?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did either.
Came up and we didn't. I specifically did not do anything for Aunt Becky because that would be.
You heard her house got robbed, right?
No.
Yeah. They took like $1 million in jewelry or something like that. So maybe that was all the money they were going to use to pay for college. I don't know. But yeah, no joke. They posted a whole thing about that whole cast with Saget and Becky, and it's just been a nightmare for those people recently. I feel bad.
Oh, so you thought? Well, I thought Betty White's house.
Yeah, no, but we kind of, when you went into Aunt Becky, we talked about. But yeah, Betty White too. So so the whole cast of that program.
Now that you got me in two different directions here, Jodie Sweetin, who played the not the Olsen twins, so not the baby, but the little 8, 9, 10-year-old girl in the original series. She reminds me a lot of my youngest sister.
Okay.
And she has been through some issues herself over the years. She's beaten a meth addiction, to be honest.
Oh, jeepers. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
wow.
you give kids money, and what do they got to spend it on?
Yeah.
Well, to bring it back to sports, it's the Dwight Gooden story.
Yeah.
Let's hand a 19-year-old kid $1 million, and what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, they're not going to be buying a Strat or Appa seasons, you know what I mean?
No. Well,
not
maybe,
that age.
But anyway. And so, her thing was so heartfelt and she's been through the battles in life, and she said, only 65, can't give you a hug again. How rude. Which was her catchphrase on the show, and but back to Betty. No, because Betty, New Year's Eve, wasn't it? I think she.
It was pretty close. Yeah, she didn't make the January 1st.
She'd have been 100. We're taping this on the 19th.
I think so. Yeah.
And Monday would have been her. Was
yesterday? Yeah, birthday. Yesterday would have been 100th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine 100. So she was born in 1921, was it?
1922.
Imagine being born in 1922, all the things that you've seen. I think my grandmother was born in 25, and she used to tell me the stories about how they would all huddle in the kitchen next to the stove because it was just warmer, in the kitchen than it was in any other part of the house. And the soot from the stove would get their dresses all black and stuff like that. Yeah, the stories they were telling me, yeah.
Betty was older than sliced bread. Sliced bread, I believe, was invented commercially in the late 20s or early 30s. So
oh, wow.
It's an easier way to distribute that.
So she actually, she grew up, she might be been a little too young, but she was like Three Stooges.
She graduated from high school in 39. So she would have been in high school during that. One of those things about you live a century or whatever. My great-grandfather, I forget how old he was when he died, but his birthday was July 20th. And so he grew up a farmer. So poor farmer, probably a little older than Betty, and all the things that he saw in his lifetime, radio and television and 2 world wars and all that. But on his birthday in 1969, man walked on the moon for the first time. And so imagine growing up in that environment of being rural, very rural, upstate New York, where a Model T would have been a luxury for him.
Jeepers, yeah.
To see on television a man walking on the surface of another body.
Yeah, I remember my dad telling me that he watched that on TV, and it was late. It was the middle of the night, I guess, when it happened, and everybody stayed up to watch it. Yeah.
And so for Betty, yes, she did her first shot on television in 1939. So she would have been right out of high school.
Wow.
And because of the lights, those rooms were almost white hot. And because there was no color then, you wore pancake makeup and black lipstick because red didn't look good on camera. So you're all made up. You're wearing all this stuff to look normal. And she wasn't just a television icon. She was an American icon. There's not much sports with her. I mean, her love of animals, and
she did some funny commercials in the last 5 or 10 years or so that just were hysterical. Well, she just went along with it, she was great.
She played she was, married Alan Ludden to host a Password. So she did all these game shows and she took them all seriously. And she was so good at it. I mean, in the 70s, Match Game and all that. Look, $10,000 is $10,000. And 50 years ago, $10,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, you knew that she had the whole point of those shows were to have fun. But when it came time to give out the cash, they didn't bluff it off.
Yeah.
And so, no, she was a treasure.
That was good. You think about like growing up, like back then, I used to listen to a lot of old time radio on satellite. I still do once in a while, but I used to like to listen to the murder mysteries and the Shadow and
Boston Blackie. And,
there's some detective ones I listen to, but I enjoyed a lot of the sci-fi stuff. And there was
the year 2000.
No, the best one was the year is 1988, and man has settled on Mars, and this is one of the journeys to Mars. And they're like, hey. Is this your first time to Mars? Oh, no, I've been to Mars several times. Oh, yeah, Mars is great. Way better. And it's funny that you get 1988 we were supposed to be colonizing the universe. And whenever they wrote these things back in the 40s and the 50s. And so it's really funny how off they were.
I was watching some, not to get too maudlin here, watching some clips the Golden Girls, everyone is kind of familiar with. Mary Tyler Moore. Those shows, I think, aged better than people thought. And so I watched a couple of clips as Betty as Sue Ann. And I just started laughing uncontrollably because they were so clever. And she delivered, first of all, the show was so well written, but she delivered her lines to a T.
Right.
There's one clip where she and Ted Knight, she's going to do news from a woman's point of view, which tells you just how long ago that was, and points to the camera, and she's talking about this mudslide in Alaska. And then she goes through with all these lines about as they're getting in the mud, don't forget, if you put a little baking soda in the wash, they'll get those stains right out.
Oh, no, yeah.
And as they're going through and recovering in the high school gym, which was for the prom, living on the farm and drinking chicken soup, which is a wonderful nourishment out of taurines disguised in paper mache pigs or what. The whole thing is just so out of touch and so insensitive, and it was at the time, but she delivered. You're laughing. And she was more than Rose Nyland. She just did everything that she did extremely well.
Yeah.
And to get her to they released a picture of her just before Christmas, and she looked pretty good. My understanding was that her last week that she had a stroke.
I think I did hear that. Yeah.
Stroke at home, and at 99, that's
at that point there. Yeah.
But no, what a life well lived.
Yeah. Good.
I can't imagine at 50 that to know that I'd be around for her 49.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. But anyway, so boy, the January weather for you and I, since the holidays, it's been 3 times we've had single digits. We've had wind whipping. We've lost power 3 times this month, and we don't lose three times in 10 years. And It's been since the holidays left, it's like winter says, here we are. We're going to make it miserable for you.
Oh, goodness. The wind chill last night was 20 below zero. Monday, it was 40 below zero here. The actual air temperature in Burlington was 11 below zero. And it's supposed to get today, I think it was supposed to be 35, although all I can do is hear the wind out my window, and then it's supposed to get down to 10, 11 below zero over the weekend. It's a good thing there's some good football on this weekend because you're not doing anything outside.
And there wasn't any good football on last weekend. There were people that were talking about, they added the extra playoff team, so we get extra games, and it's just like, was it really worth it? Because
no, it's a money grab.
4 out of 6 games weren't even close.
Terrible.
Terrible is a good word for it. Just
explain to me how. I mean, the whole point of expanding the wild card weekend when it first started back in 1990 was like, okay, here are 4 games where no one is going to win the Super Bowl, and I think that's not true. I think the Patriots did it one year, and after they expanded,
Tampa Bay did it one last year with Brady. They were a wild card.
Were they last year?
The Raiders, I think, were a wild card when they won it.
Yeah, so it can happen, but it's okay. So let's honor these teams. But there were always 2 division winners, I suppose. But no, it's between the extra week and now the 6 wild card games. It's normally I'm a casual football fan, but I'll watch the playoffs. I'll have all 4 games on.
Yeah.
This weekend. How long I watch depends on how close they stay. But going into this weekend, there was only 3 games I really had any remote interest in, and I'm happy about the Bengals and even the Bills. So again, nothing against the Patriots. I'd rooted for them against anybody. I shut that game off when it was 20-0.
Yeah, I didn't even watch any of that. I think the only game I watched the Bengals and the Raiders. And then by the time I got to watch it, like the Pittsburgh-Kansas City game, that was over. The New England game was over. Monday night, the Cardinals and the rink. I was at the rink. I was refereeing, and it was like, the Cardinals were getting blown up.
34-11 or something like that. Good for Matthew Stafford. But again, how is that compelling television? What if you want me to? Why? What are you doing to make me want to sit and watch?
Yeah. And I would think that at halftime 4 of those games people checked out, which is too bad.
Again, this is right after the college bowl season. So for those of us again on the casual side, we pick our. I watched Michigan get blown out in one semifinal, and that got shut off. The Rose Bowl was an entertaining game. Watching Notre Dame choke, well, I enjoyed that. But beyond that, I had no interest in watching Georgia and Alabama in the national championship. So
I didn't watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, all this football, and it's like, I'll pass.
Yeah,
and
unfortunately.
I think, you can get footballed out, even baseballed out, watching all 4 series. And I mean, there's a limit. I mean, I remember, not to belabor the point, when I was in college or first few years I worked, I would take the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament off. And by Sunday night, I didn't want to see another dribbling basketball for another year. It's great to watch all that basketball and all the drama with that, but at some point, okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah, I get it. So.
And so I think we've reached, unless you are a diehard football fan, oversaturation with it. Personally.
Yeah. I don't see them scaling back, but it was disappointing.
It doesn't go back.
It doesn't go back. It was very disappointing though, and I get it. More teams, more money grab, but boy, they were very disappointing games. It just was. But anyway.
How can you sit there and justify that the Philadelphia Eagles were a playoff team?
Yeah.
How can any number 7 seed justify being a playoff team? At least in hockey, when we did 16 out of 21, you at least there were rivalries, so at least got games in your own division. Or back in the 70s when they seeded everybody and let the chips fall where they may, at least it wasn't just one and done. But yeah, no, it's too diluted, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that.
Lawn.
Yeah, so you might hear me sniffling a lot today. It's not because I'm sick.
Did you lick a doorknob again?
No, what I did this morning is every morning I try to take my apple cider vinegar Okay. And sometimes I forget, and sometimes, or whatever, but every morning.
Pill form, or you actually drink some?
Well, we have gummies, so I'll take those during the day, but I have the Bragg, the mother of all, whatever it is. It's the apple cider vinegar. It's supposed to be, and I've been doing that for years now, and it's supposed to be really good for you, regulate your blood sugar, lose weight, and give you energy. And I believe it does all that. And so I mix it with usually Gatorade or some kind of a juice in the morning.
Oh, that would make sense. So this is a concentrate.
You put just like a couple of tablespoons in a glass, and then you fill the rest of that glass with something, because it is so harsh. It is so harsh, and even then it's harsh. And then I take all my vitamins. Okay, so I try to keep my vitamins up so I don't get sick in the whole bit. And this morning I took a handful of vitamins and I went to chug it, and it is so harsh, even when it's completely diluted.
Oh, really?
I just got the vitamins down, and something kicked into a gag reflex, and it all came back up through my nose.
Oh!
And I'm just like, I'm kind of laughing, because this never happened before. I mean, I've gagged on it a few times. If you've ever had apple cider vinegar, it is nasty. It is nasty, but it is so good for you. And every day I get tears coming out of my eyes when I do it. This time, some reason, it just triggered a gag reflex. It just was really strong. And it come right up through my nose. So my nose is on fire because I got apple cider vinegar in there, and I'm trying to get it out. And it's, I just thought it was a funny story, because I'm like,
that is funny. Early on in my relationship with Sarah, we're at a restaurant, like a cheap Chinese restaurant, one of those mall type deals.
Well, you spoil her like that, so I can see that.
Oh, Jesus. She's stuck with me for 26 years next month we've been together. So, yeah, make all the jokes you want about that Burger King boy. So we're at a Chinese place. It's about all we could afford, I think, at the time. And that's right. That's right. Door number 3, Monty. And so she's saying something, and she took a sip of soda, and I turned it into a joke. And she got laughing. So Sprite is okay going down. But your nostrils are not meant to be a soda fountain. And it didn't really matter what it was I said. It just came out her nose, full bubbly. And, of course, soda is full of acid. I mean, that's why we drink it. Oh, yeah, my shoulder got slapped a few times.
Oh, at least it wasn't a milkshake. That would have been even worse,
That, yeah. So
a real thick milkshake.
the real, yes. Don't Google that. So she made a point from that point on. This was like in the first couple months of the relationship, that she waited for me to finish my thought before she took a drink, because fool me once, shame on you. She wasn't doing that again. And for the most part, she hasn't done that again. But yes, I can. She made me do that once with Coke. The soda.
Yeah, it's funny when it happens. I did laugh, but I was like, holy cow. So like for the last few hours, my nose has just been running because of that. It's been irritated. So maybe it cleaned it out. Who knows? Maybe it get all the germs out.
Yes.
But anyway, so what do you think? So why don't we kind of combine what we're playing into the topic of the fun factor there, because we've been going on about 15 to 20 minutes here before we get going. So we had a lot of things we wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to in the last couple weeks. So yeah, we'll get into what we're playing / the fun factor, which is the topic of the day. Here we go.
I think with you in particular, kind of the funnest factor kind of goes with discovery of a new game. We talked about this a bit when you finally pulled out APA and pulled out 2 teams that you knew, and it went boom. Not only does this work, I had fun doing it. And so I think what we're going to lead to is a discussion of pocket pennant run baseball and you having an all-time great World Series. And then I'll just kind of let you go from there.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. And let me tell you about how that wrapped up. And I usually don't go into a lot of detail of individual games that I play, but this one I'd like to point out because it was fun. And that kind of led me to the topic of the day as far as the fun factor. So, and I think that's a good point you made as far as one of the fun factors we have is discovering a new game. Mm-hmm. And I discovered a new hockey game, too. I did a couple of videos on called Quick Results Hockey. And I'm finding out, even though it's a quick results game, that there's a lot of little intricate rules that I'm still ironing out, because I've played it a few times, I've done a few videos, and I've been talking to people, and we're trying to. It's some of it's explained well, and I just missed it, and some of it is a little confusing, and I missed it. So so that was fun. But yeah, the Pocket Pennant Run. I ended up playing the 1980 playoffs, whereas, again, I did the Yankees and the Royals and the Astros and the Phillies, and they flip-flopped, and they both were sweeps. The Astros and the Yankees, both who lost, swept in my replay, and they went to the World Series, and I played them with Pocket Pennant Run. It ended up going, it was back and forth. I think it was like, Houston, Yankees, Houston, Yankees, Houston. So we went back to Houston for Game 6, and this is how it played out. And this is Pocket Pennant Run, which is a fairly simple baseball game to play, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's called Pocket Pennant Run. You put it in your pocket, and you can play this game. It's a portable game. You can play it on an airplane. You can play it at a restaurant. I mean, you can play this anywhere. It's just the footprint is so small.
A long layover. You can probably pop out a game in about 20-25 minutes.
Yeah, I think I can do a game in 29 minutes was my record. Yeah, and that's just learning the game. So anyway, so we go to Game 6, Houston Yankees, 1980. Houston has a chance to win it. First inning, Cesar at the Astrodome. Cesar Cedeno, 2-run home run. Astros up 2-0. We get to the second, Oscar Gamble homers, and it's 2-1. So the Yankees is clawing their way back in a must-win situation. We go to the sixth, Cedeno homers again, a single shot. It's 3-1. We get into the seventh inning, Alan Ashby doubled, and after a sacrifice hit and a ground ball to second, he scores. So it's now 4-1 Houston. We go to the eighth. Now I'm playing this game, and I got Nolan Ryan pitching against Rudy May is what the actual pitches were. That's what they used in the playoffs. Now obviously this game never happened, so I just kind of went on what they did in the championship series. So we go to the eighth inning, and it's 4-1 Houston, and I'm thinking that Ryan's mowing him down. Here we go. It's going to be a nice day for the Astros. They're going to win. Bucky Dent comes up and he whiffs him. I'm like, Houston, the crowd, and this is what I'm picturing, Ron, when I'm rolling the dice for this game. Okay, I'm just sitting by myself right here in Studio B, and I'm rolling the dice, and one down, and I'm like, I can just see the Astrodome rise. There are 5 outs from a World Series win.
This is right in the middle of the Love You Blue Oilers era, too. I mean, this was up until the Astros won the World Series a few years ago, the crown jewel of Houston sports in total. I mean, yes, the Rockets did win a couple titles, but yes, I mean, this is right in the middle of that era.
Yep. So I'm sitting in, I'm like, this is great. It's 5 outs away, and next thing you know, Bob Watson walks. Reggie Jackson singles. Tie-in run comes to the plate in Rick Cerrone, and he hits a 3-run home run, and the game is tied at 4-4. And I could just feel the air just get sucked out of the Astrodome, jaws dropping. It was just, wow. Did he really tie this game in the 8th with 1 away? And yes, he did. And so I take Nolan Ryan out, and I put in the next pitcher, and he gets the next 2 batters. Astros go down in order in the 8th, and we go to the 9th. 2 outs in the 9th. Willie Randolph homers. So not only does the Yankees come back from 3 runs down in the 8th, they now go ahead in the 9th.
They've likely forced a Game 7.
Yeah, it is now 5-4. Astros are stunned at this point, right? So we go to the bottom of the 9th. I bring in the closer, Gossage, to close it out. Joe Morgan steps to the plate, first batter of the 9th, bottom of the 9th, and he homers to tie the game at 5. And now the air's right back into the Astrodome, and it was unbelievable. Then I get Terry Poole singles, Reynolds singles. It's first and third, bottom of the 9th, tie game, World Series on the line. And Gossage ends up getting the next 2 batters with a shallow fly, so there could not be a tag. And that's what's great about Pocket Pennant. It tells you if you can tag. So it was obviously not deep enough. And then he strikes out Jose Cruz. We go to extra innings. I look at the clock, and I got to go to work. No joke. And I'm like, do I try to roll an inning or not? So I said, okay, I'm going to squeeze out an inning. And then, so the Yankees, they get a walk, and then they go 3 down. And then Gossage strikes out the side in the 10th. So now I got to go to the 11th. Like, I really got to go to work. So I have to leave this game, which I'm totally into. And I got to
pause on the VCR.
I did. I had to pause the VCR, go to the rink. So I come home a couple hours later, and I pick it back up in the 11th. Nothing really happens in the 11th for either team. As I'm looking at my notes here, the Yankees 12th, they go down 1-2-3. So now we're in the bottom of the 12th. And who was it? Craig Reynolds hits a ground ball to Willie Randolph, and he commits an error. I rolled a 12 on the blue die. That's an error. So Willie Randolph boots it. So we bunt him over to second. And then it was Jose Cruz comes up. And Jose Cruz...
one of the biggest heroes in real life in Astros history.
And Jose Cruz singles with the 2 dots, meaning the base runners get 2 bases, and that scores Reynolds a walk-off single. Astros win the World Series. And now this is right around midnight, 12:30 now, by the time I come home from work and I finish this game. And I'm like dancing and jumping up and down. Not that I care who won, but just how exciting it was. And I was just like, woohoo, they won. Gotta be quiet. It's midnight, you know. Holy cow, Ron. That little pocket pennant game, with that conclusion to the World Series, how the Yankees were down by 3, tied it, went ahead in the 9th, then Morgan ties it, and we go to the 12th, and I'm going through all these pictures, and then they get a walk-off single. It just was, the fun factor of that game is ridiculous.
Just described a combination of Game 6 of the 86 NLCS, where the Astros were down in extra innings and tied it in the bottom of the 13th. The Mets won it in 16 to win the series. Game 6 of the 86 World Series, which we don't need to go into.
Yeah.
And the Game 6 of the 2011 World Series. The Rangers were down to their last strike twice.
Yeah. And
the Cardinals pulled it out. I mean, that's what makes baseball the way it is. Our dear friend Big Clue, Brad Bolton, said, passes it along Earl Weaver's sentiments. You have 27 outs. Use them wisely. It's not a time game. Once you run out, use them wisely. And that's what makes that game fun, because on the surface, as you said, this is not an advanced game in any way, shape, or form. But you were able to get out of that. You're a fan of that game. You like that game anyway, but now you're a fan of that game for life, because it gave you the ultimate feedback. You had the pony game. It's like one of those things that you'll remember. You'll be in the home. They'll be changing your thing. Where's Joe Morgan? I need Joe.
It was. It was.
And it was so much fun, and you were so excited when you told me about it.
And so that kind of brought up the whole fun factor topic, was that game, that series, how it went back and forth, how each team had the lead, and it was 3-2 Houston coming back to Game 6, and it was just so much fun. And I know that, like, that game right now, it's like the new hot baseball game. And I kind of feel bad for the guys that made it, because they're getting inundated with people that are trying to make the homebrew rules. And I know you should take that as a compliment, because that means they really like your game, and they want.
They can't even keep the physical stuff and stuff.
Yeah, and they want more of it. They want more of your game, and that's kind of what happened. We talked about Al Wilson's Fast Drive Football. He's created this fantastic football game. And people like, something, this game is good, and I'm going to make it even better. And he got inundated with people that, hey, I have great ideas, and here's a chart for this, a chart for that. So that's what is happening with Pocket Pennant. In fact, even myself was guilty of, maybe I can factor in some runs, or maybe I can factor in an arm here. And eventually I ended up pretty much walking back all the things that I wanted to add to the game and just played it as it was, because I think it was you and a couple other people that I talked to or saw on Facebook. They made some pretty good cases for, the ratings are really not out of line. they might be kind of generic because it's A, B, C, D, and so they're kind of a broad set of ratings, and you can again, you can pick those apart if you want all day long. But for the most part, it's going to get you in the ballpark, no pun intended.
That's what you want.
And that's all you want. Now, is it going to be the most statistically accurate baseball game you ever play? Probably not. But as far as the fun factor goes and what I get out of that, and when I'm looking for a game, I tell you, that was fantastic. And so I've pretty much walked back most of my home brews. The only one I do is I still roll the green die, and if I get a ground ball and the green die is a 1 or a 12, that's a 12-sided die, I use that as a pop-up. So that's the only thing that I add is that green die to try to get a pop-up in the game. But aside from that, and the pitchers, I kind of just go with feel as when to pull them.
Yeah, feel as well. That's what a manager does. So.
Yeah, fatigue is kind of a very... It's
subjective.
It's very subjective as to what's going on in the game because, I don't really like the app of fatigue because, I have the old cards. The new cards, I guess they have batter's face, which really would come in and help. But, just to have everybody go the same amount of innings no matter what happens is not really realistic. So I go on feel. And, I had Gossage pitch 3 innings instead of 2 because I thought he was doing well. Stuff like that. But anyway, but this game is such a simple game to play. You can pick up and play it. You can play it on your lap if you want to. It's really a small footprint game, much like shootout hockey, which is shootout hockey is just 2 cards, and then you can either roll dice to do fast action card flips. But the fun that you get out of that game, and not like I say, I don't want to sit there and worry about is this statistically accurate. Would Joe Morgan really hit a home run? Would Oscar Gamble really hit a home run? Just to play it for the fun. It was pretty unbelievable. And so, like you said, discovering a new game can be a fun factor. Having an epic game like I did in Game 6 is a fun factor. No matter what the game is. I don't care if this was just a 2 dice roll game or if it was the deepest baseball game you could possibly play. That was immense. So the fun factor was huge in that game. And then I think, too, some of the football games I played, like the long play games, the second season from Play is a long game. Solitaire Pro Football is a long game. Fast Action Football from Downey is a long game. It's play by play. You're looking at a minimum of an hour and a half, sometimes 2.5 hours to play these things. And you got, even back in the day, I was like, why would you ever want to play a 2.5 hour game? That's ridiculous. When you play it, and you get 2.5 hours of fun out of it, it doesn't matter if it's a half hour or if it's 2.5 hours. If you are engaged in it's like a movie. Some novel type stuff. Yeah, sometimes I'll look at, she'll say, hey, you want to watch a movie? And I'll say, this one looks good. Oh, it's 2.5 hours. Do we really want to sit here for 2.5 hours and watch a movie? That might be one of the best movies you've ever seen. But
to get back to Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, the way it was going back and forth, and you just, you lose track of time. And Sarah even watched the end of that game, and Sarah does not like baseball. She married me anyway, but she really doesn't like baseball. And she, Tiger Woods and Brett Favre are her sports, and Favre's retired, and Tiger really can't play anymore. So Sarah's days of watching sports are done. But I brought her in to watch it because it was just remarkable how these two teams are just going back and forth. And when David Freese hit the home run into the batter's eye, and Joe Buck, who is better than people think he is, we'll see you tomorrow night. I remember looking up at the clock here, and it said 12:35. And so that was a 5.5 hour game.
Yeah.
But boy, did it not feel like it.
Yeah, and sometimes
and then when I covered baseball, and you get some 9-0 blowout, and the game starts at 7:05. When you look at it, it's 10:30. It's like, oh, now I've got more work to do. Yes, if you get engrossed in it, it really doesn't matter how long it takes. I think that was the point you're.
Yeah, and because I used to look at and there are still people, you see them there, they make their posts on, the social media, like, oh man, how long is this game? I don't want to play that. When you play it, the second season in Solitaire Pro Football, they take so long to play that I'll play a quarter and put it away, or a half and put it away. And I use the Pro Football Helper, so it saves all my stats. I think it's beautiful. I love that. So then, I just. I don't have to do it in one sitting is what I get at,
That was, yes. And so let me talk about the other side of that coin. And you brought up a point that I was going to make. You don't have to do them all in one sitting. Especially if you're on the computer, you can save them, even if it's a card and dice game. Mm-hmm. So cats or kids or spouses can't knock stuff down. Classic F1. Which I've been trying to rack my brain to come up with a long-term project to do just for myself, because that game isn't just, the go to the vending machine and pick out your, easy snack. That is you go to the gourmet store to buy you're cutting the scallions to put in your soup type game. I mean, that game has every possible contingency, and it is as complex as anything, and it is not for casual fans, and I would consider myself to be a casual Formula One fan. But he sold me just reading through the directions, the fact that the driver can theoretically drive any car he drove his entire F1 career. So he could get a championship car, or he could get the clunker that he started his career with. It just gives it. So there's just so many different variables to it, putting everything together and setting that all up. I know you're going to talk about setting up for other things, so setting that all up. And then maybe the first time it took me to do that was an hour and a half just to set it up. This is not even qualifying a driver or running a race, or just like, okay, this was fun. I really enjoyed this part of it. And then qualifying goes rather quick because I forgot to check a couple of the rules. And then when we finally got to the race part, that was still another 2 hours for me to do the first time. It's probably going to be always an hour and a half to actually run the race. But the game itself is so engaging that you don't feel like you're spending that much time. And so there's a pit stop because it's auto racing. And so maybe the objective is, I'm going to do this until I get to the pit stop. And then that's a good stopping point. Usually you're around halfway through the race or something like that. Okay, I spent an hour, spent my time doing this and gone through it. And in a couple days, I'll go through and pick it back up. But just the fun of, learning something so complex, because it's not computerized. You are literally going through everything. But the rewards of that were that you understood that Anthony, and I forget his last name, it starts with an A, created this game that is incredibly rich, incredibly complex, and incredibly immersive. I think the fun factor I think both of us are describing is how immersive it is. You're describing. Yeah, and
it's funny you bring up this
innings there, and I'm visiting because it was an NBC series. Joe and Tony going through with that comeback, and how crazy Gary Shiola would have gotten when the Astros came back. Morgan ties it, that. And a couple of years ago, I'm doing a stream as you're playing Game 8 of the Summit Series between Canada and Russia, and I forgot what engine you were doing that with.
Shootout.
Unofficial shootout thing. I got to make sure it's unofficial.
A homebrew shootout, of Canada and Team USSR.
And so I'm streaming whatever it was I'm streaming, and you have Canada choked a bit. Russia scored 5 in the third, and so as you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I'm picturing this in my head. All right, back to Moscow. Here's Brent. And Tika, here it is again. Boom. Russia's going to, that's the sort of thing that makes a game. Doesn't necessarily break a game if you don't have those moments, but it makes a game and keeps it on your team.
Yeah. And so, so I've had some serious fun factor in games like Shootout and Pocket Pennant, where they're not the deepest of games. They're not the longest of games to play. They're 15, 20-minute, half-hour games, but you just get so much fun out of that. The fun factor is just ridiculous at that point. And so you might sacrifice a little bit of accuracy and a little bit of depth for the fun, but holy cow, that fun factor is unbelievable. And so you talk about setup. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So you get that where it's And you know who does a good job of that is the play games.
Yes.
When you do the golf, okay, as I get the phone ringing here. That's how it happens here. Sorry about that, folks. Just when you record at home, this happens. When you're setting up for the golf, right, you get all the golfers there, and you kind of, quote, play the first couple of days or so. So, and it's really kind of just putting stacks out and then roll the dice to see, okay, you're going to take the third card, the fifth card, and then the best guy remaining. And that's who makes the cut. And you do that. So you're setting up for a Sunday is what you're doing with History Maker Golf. And that's a whole game within a game is doing that. So you're not even rolling for shots or putts. You're just rolling to see who makes the cut out of all those guys. And it's fun seeing, a random D-level golfer sneak into Sunday and an A-level golfer not make it. And that's what makes that kind of fun. Is the setup of that. And again, for me, it's 4 to 5 hours to play a complete tournament with that. And so a lot of times what people do is they'll take the first hour or so, hour and a half, maybe less, I forget what it is, and they'll just do the setup. So they'll go through and they'll roll the first 3 days and they'll get the order for Sunday. So when you start Sunday, you have the order of who's in first and where they all stand, and then that gives you an idea of which golfers are going to tee off first. And the same with red, white, and blue racing. You go through a whole setup of, who's going to be the TV drivers and who's going to be in what pack and who's in first and who's at the back. And so you have a whole bunch of setup with that before you even start the game. And that can be just as fun. It's almost like a mini game of setting that up. Now, then you get into design setup, which is, kind of what I did with the payoff pitch
you
cards.
You do that a lot with a lot of your games.
Is I'll get a PDF and I'll jazz it up with logos and make it look nice, and then I'll print out my teams. But holy cow, there's been a couple of people I've seen on Facebook. Holy moly, they are phenomenal with their card design. So they'll take a standard card from Name Your Game that's just a black and white card, and they will go into Excel or Photoshop or some kind of program, and they'll set it up where it's got the logos and it's got swirling colors, and it almost looks like a baseball card or a hockey card, the way they have it set up. And sometimes they don't necessarily put the player's picture on there, but the way they set it up, so all the information from the card's on there, but it's such eye candy. It's like, man, I would love to play with a card like that because it just looks so nice.
We've talked about this. I call it the model railroadization of it, because if you're familiar with model railroad, some people really go out and do a tremendous job. This is not a slam on them, to make sure that the trees look good. And the backgrounds look good. It's just gorgeous stuff. And yes, absolutely.
My buddy Ray does that. He sent me a couple of pictures today, and I was like, "Oh, you outside taking pictures of trains again?" He says, "No, that's in my basement." I'm like, what?
Really,
I go, are you serious?
He's really good.
This is a basement picture? I thought this was an actual train with a landscape behind it. So yeah, some people get really in, and they do that in our sports sim community too.
Ray is tremendous. So
yeah, he's fantastic with that. He's just he goes down in his basement and he pays attention to detail, and that's what we do here, And some people get really creative with their setup on the desktop, where they have, like I like when I play APA, I like to print out the team logos and put them on the ice mat or the play mat or whatever it is that we play on, and that way you know what team is what. And that orientates me to what team is what, and and when I broadcast, it's easy to see who the Bruins are, who the Canadians are, who the Rangers are, whatever teams I'm playing. I think that just adds to it. I bought a couple of nets that came with like a little kid set of toy hockey players. And
is that what those are?
That's what those are. And there's several. Like I was going to use the rod hockey nets, but they were really big. These nets are probably only about 3 inches long. And
they're perfect size.
They're perfect size. I put them right behind the goalie, and it looks like a hockey rink. And just that $10 I spent on those nets, and then the logos I printed out, it just my setup for that. I feel like I'm at a hockey rink when I do that. I really do. And there's other people that have fantastic things. I know Al Red Sox fan like to bring out the helmets there, and a couple other guys do that. Sportsman Z, I think he cuts out individual logos for the base runners in his baseball game and helmets for the football game, and that's all cards and dice that he's doing there. And then
RJL 518 setup for inside pitch.
Yeah, he's got the scoreboard, and he puts the logos over the scoreboard. So you never, you always know who's winning and what inning it is if you watch a broadcast, and that's not easy to do. It's really not easy to set up that stuff. And
pure cards and dice is tough to stream.
Yeah,
because you have to have something to show.
Yeah, sometimes what I do is I'll go into Excel and create a scoreboard and just kind of have it on the top or the bottom like like you see on the TV there. But even that, it's kind of a pain. Then you got to go in and change the score, and it's not easy to. But that's part of the setup, and that's part of the entertainment, and that's part of the immersion. Now, we talked a lot about immersion in the whole bit. So sometimes the setup or the design, or whether it's on a computer, like you go in and you put all the fields and all the players in when you play your action PC games. I go in and I put the logos in and the rinks in when I play some of my hockey games and football games. What's that? Pro Strategy Football, where you have all the custom fields and custom teams and logos.
Mike from the truck and his buddies have done a tremendous job of that.
So that's all part of setup and design. And then you got 2nd and 10. They have the package that brings it.
Wilson. Wilson did all the pods.
Oh my gosh! When I play 2nd and 10 on the computer, just seeing all the helmets and the scoreboard. I mean, it looks like you're watching a TV broadcast. It is really phenomenal.
So let me tell you about fun factor in a way that maybe isn't, your team took a dive or took let's be honest, let's be blunt, a dump. And so I'm doing the 77 Red Sox, and I stopped out for a while because the next series for me for that was the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. So late June. And so sometimes you just pull these things out when you're half asleep and you can go through. And if you're playing the A's or the Rangers or whatever, you just want to zip through. But I wanted to make sure I was awake and aware and wanted to play the Yankees because, look, that 77 Red Sox offense is, it's Pac-Man. And those 77 Red Sox pitchers are, well, to be charitable, bad. So beat them the first game at Yankee Stadium and get to with Don Asse beating somebody. And so the second game of the series was a Saturday afternoon, and it's Louis Tiant and Eddie Figueroa. And Louis Tiant, when he's good, he's good. And when he's bad, he's bad. And he was bad. And so over the course of any season replay, you get to know who's doing. Some people are going to do well for you, and some people. So I knew it was a game I was going to lose. And I have no problem losing. I mean, you're playing the best team in baseball. You're not going to beat them all the time. And so anyone who's listened to this or watched my streams know I have a love-hate relationship with Bob Stanley. I guess Bob Stanley, the former Red Sox pitcher, is just a wonderful human being. Okay.
But on the field.
On the field, I, start to, even as a kid, the 7th inning and I got a 2-run lead. On those nights I was allowed to stay up, and Ken Coleman, and warming in the pen is Bob Stanley. Oh no. I mean, Stanley should never have been a closer. Let's be honest. Yeah. And so it's turned into a running joke on my channel that I just don't like Bob Stanley. Well, Stanley is having a slump in my replay, and so he wasn't closing, but he wasn't getting put into any high leverage situations anymore. So I'm in the middle of getting smoked by the Yankees. I think it's 8-2 or whatever in the 5th. Tiant's done. Okay, Bob, playing super advanced. Bob's point of weakness as a reliever is 4 innings. Go finish this game. Just don't let me burn anybody else. Just get through it. You can give up a couple runs. I don't care. Get me back on your good side. No outs later. All of Tiant's,
no outs later. I feel like it's what you're watching SpongeBob. No outs later.
There you go. No outs later. All of Tiant's runners that he left on scored. And Stanley promptly gave up a homer to I think it was Bucky Dent, or someone that should have hit a home run. Stanley's line there was an error. Butch Hobson made an error, so it wasn't all Robert's fault. His line was no innings, 6 hits, 6 runs, 5 earned.
Oh,
and
wow!
If this was actual cards and dice, that card would have been torn to shreds. But it was fun because it was immersive in the fact that here's my memory, good, bad, or indifferent of said player, and this player makes a mess that even the most professional nurses in the hospital would have.
It kind of reminds me of that the inside pitch game I played the other night. Remember what Parrott? It was the Blue Jays and the Mariners.
Yeah, Mike Parrott for Seattle.
Mike Parrott gave up 8 runs in the first inning. He just couldn't get out of the inning. It was hilarious.
But it was fun because at that point you've lost. It wasn't like he gave up runs in a high leverage situation. I knew I wasn't going to win that game. That's okay. We took the first game. I still have to play the third game. We went down to the stadium and took one. Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
If they win the rubber game with Fergie Jenkins the next time I play, even better. But I mean, so it wasn't. Yeah, I was upset but I wasn't angry about it. But yes, that was fun because it provokes that. Here's my thoughts on this guy, and yep. For all the world to see on my tabletop, Blammo, the Taco Bell undercooked special, right there.
Yep.
So to me, that was fun.
Yeah, sometimes losing can be fun because again, the games don't matter. These are all just fictional games. The game's already been played. You can't change history. It's just for your entertainment. And sometimes it is aggravating, but other times I can see it is kind of fun because I've done that with the Bruins where I played Strat hockey one time and I took them on a West Coast road trip and I thought I was going to mow everybody down. And, we ended up going 500 on the road trip. It's like, we beat the Seals, but I think we lost to the Kings and the Red Wings and we tied the Canucks or something. I was like, holy cow, how do we not destroy these teams? But we didn't, and it was just kind of fun, Yeah,
it's fun. It happens with road trips. I mean, the Red Sox would do it every year. Go down to Texas. Oh, goody, we should beat them? No, we're not doing that this time around. It's 97 degrees, and we've just lost 8-3.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danny Darwin. So, yes, I completely get that.
Yeah.
It's fun now. Not necessarily fun when you're going through it, but on the tabletop, when you're relaxed about it, and as you said, you can't go back and change anything, but that's what makes it fun.
Yep, it is. And the other thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is complex games can be fun and have a fun factor as well. And there's some people that enjoy that. Now, I know mostly I play the more basic games with broader ratings and stuff I can kind of get through in a quicker setting.
Rat Super Advanced Basketball. I have had so much fun with that.
Oh, yeah, good point there. Yes.
It just, again, not a huge basketball fan even when I was a kid. I mean, the Celtics were the saving grace for growing up a Red Sox fan. But going through and playing those game by game by game and seeing those players become three-dimensional figures. I did a game the other day. I told you, at the point where my Islanders are going to play the Flyers. I haven't played that one yet. The Red Sox got to play the Yankees, and the Celtics have to play the 76ers on my birthday on the road. And what did the Celtics do? They put up 42 in the first quarter, and it was been the best 14th birthday present ever for me. That just sort of thing because A, you can kind of control how complex you want to make it, which I think is what you're going to get into in a moment. But B, because there are people, it makes it easier to make these things come to life. And no, you don't have to escape with a 40-point win. That's not the point. But the fact that you're playing this game that is complex, that has multiple different layers to it, but man, does it flow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoy, like I said, the games I've been playing here, but I think of a baseball game like Inside Pitch, where holy cow,
man, does Robert make that sing, doesn't he?
Oh man, how does he do that?
He makes that sing.
I mean, I play on the computer and I have a hard time with it there. It's such a detailed and complex game, but I mean, he has a blast with that, and a lot of people love that game. And it's games like that just the level of detail, the complexity of the game, solving the puzzles. We did a whole show on one time. It just that people have fun with that, and I could see how you could. I mean, there's some hockey games that are complex. There's some football games. There's and you talked about basketball games, where you get into, okay, I got to look at this card and look at this rating and compare to this rating and then look at a chart. Oh, and now I got to look at this other guy here, and you do all that and you look at this symbol and what does this symbol mean? And holy cow, it is like a Tomb Raider puzzle that you're trying to solve on this particular play that's happening. But for some people, that is immensely fun, is getting to the end of that puzzle and saying, okay, this is what happened. And the game is so complex and it's so in-depth and it has so much detail that's half the fun, too, is getting into getting into the muck and the muck of sorting this out. So, I play a game like Shootout or Pocket Pennant, and I roll the dice one time and I get my result. And it's that simple. And there's other times that you go deep into this and you're trying to figure out, the super advanced or whatever it is that you're playing, the master edition. Oh, and it's like, holy cow. I mean, I watch some of these videos. I'm like, man, how do these people do this? That's fantastic. Good for you. And they're loving it. And so that's a whole nother dimension of the fun factor is solving the puzzle in an immensely deep game.
When you understand how the cards work and you see how they fit in together as a team. We talked about this before. I did the 70. Brian Trottier has become my all-time favorite player. Don't ask me why. I wasn't, I'm a Canadiens fan. It should be Jean Beliveau. It should be Patrick Waugh. It should be someone like that. But Brian Trottier was Gretzky who could play defense. Now, Gretzky did everything great. I'm not denigrating Gretzky at all. But Trottier, in my opinion, was Gretzky before Gretzky. And so understanding how that worked. And when I did that replay in Action PC, after a while, you see how all the parts kind of fit. You put that puzzle together and you roll. But doing it that season in Stratomatic, they're struggling. And understanding how the cards work, you understand why they're struggling. And to me, that makes it so much more fun because history tells you, they'll figure this out. Mm. And eventually they'll run off and win 4 cups and 19 straight playoff series and all that. But you don't know that then. And so the fun factor of that going is not necessarily when they hit the mountaintop, but watching them try to figure it out. And to me, that is immensely fun. And there are days where I pull out those 4 hairs in my head because you can't get a shot on net on an even strength situation. But on the power play, they are almost unstoppable at times. And so, yes, so exactly what you're saying. But again, it's all solving the puzzle and all understanding how the language works. Yeah. And when you figure that out, and you're beginning to do that because you've played a bunch of APA baseball and you've done that with APA hockey. Once you understand what all those hieroglyphs mean, you go, and yes, I completely understand that. And as you go further with that, it's just going to become such a joy because you know what it means. Yeah. It's
just the fun factor comes in so many shapes and sizes.
Absolutely.
When we do this here. And, we talk about all kinds of things today on that. And I'll just finish up with the one thing that quick results hockey game that I found on Delphi that I've been playing. And I've been talking to the people that, I don't know if I talk to the guy that made it or somebody that knows the guy that made it. And we're working together on I was like, look, I'm enjoying this game. I'm a little confused by it. I think some things could be spelled out a little bit better. Let's make this a little bit better of a game, And so what ended up happening, how you play that game is it's offense and defense. You get a rating. You roll on the chart to see what the rating adjustment is. And then you roll 1 die to get a score. But the beauty of that game is it's not over after you get the score. There's one last table to roll on. Mm-hmm. And they call it I forget what they call it, I forget what kind of table they call it. I think they should call it a late game drama table because what it is
club table or something
like that. Yeah, supplementary roll. I think it's called supplementary roll. But anyway, so what it is that so you have your score of the game, 3-3, whatever it is, and you roll in this chart. And it's a 2d6 roll, so it's 2 to 12, and I think that there's 4 chances to extend the game with another possible.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you roll, and if you get this, it's like, okay, check the visitor's percentage or check the visitor's whatever, and you roll the dice, and if it falls under the visitors, they get a goal. If it doesn't, then the home team gets a goal, or if it falls under neither, then neither team gets a goal. So there's this all these chances at the end of this game. And when I did they have the 72 Summit Series available for this game, Russia Canada. Canada's at home, trailing 4-1. Okay, against Russia. Okay, so I did all my calculations, I did my roll, and it was 4 Russia, 1 for Canada. And I go to the supplementary chart roll, okay, the late game drama, I like to call it. I would need to roll a 12, and then I think I would need to roll a 16 to 18. I rolled a 12 and an 18. And you know what that did? It gave the home team 3 goals.
That's great.
And a 4-1 lead for the Russians in Canada turned into a 4-4 tie because of that late game roll. And then the beauty of that is if you land on one of those spots that you check for an extra goal or an extra score, you keep rolling. And if you land on another one, you check again. So you keep rolling until you land on, I think, like 2, 3, 5, whatever the numbers are that don't have anything. So you keep rolling on this chart until you hit nothing, and then the game ends. So you could theoretically tack on a bunch of goals at the end of this game for your final score. And so, in fact, Canada tied that with that extremely crazy roll of 12-18. And then, because I had to roll again, Canada had the chance to win it on another supplementary roll, and when I rolled and they didn't get the goal, and then when I rolled again, it landed on a blank spot, and the game ended in a 4-4 tie. The fun factor
makes it all the worthwhile.
And that quick play game is so fun, and so again, there's so many different ways to have the fun factor in a game, and even quick play games can have their fun,
especially
the
first time.
And again, and then we know we're not going to get into it now, but you could get into the fun factor of doing a one-off, a fun factor of doing a full season replay.
Oh, yeah.
There's all kinds of ways you can do it, and I love watching how people like. There's one guy that's doing like every single game of every single game, of every single team, and I'm like, that is so cool that you're doing that. There's another guy that's doing Inside the Crease PC, and he's playing the Cleveland Crusaders at the WHA with Jerry Cheevers. And he's playing every single game. And I'm like, that is so cool. I'm following along, seeing how Jerry Cheevers is doing in the WHA, There's people with the Pocket Pennant Run that are trying to play every single game in a certain season. And one guy's through a whole month because that's how fast the game plays. And
the game plays pretty quick.
So there's all kinds of ways that you can have the fun factor when you play this. And we'd like to know from you guys, what is your fun factor? What is it that makes this fun for you? Is it playing, this way or that way? Is it setting up? Is it just getting down to the nitty gritty? Is it playing a bunch of games really quick? Is it playing a long play game? Do you enjoy the setup? Some people don't do the setup run. Some people are bare bones. They take out the cards, they drop it on the table, then they play, and with no kind of decorations at all, I call them. You know what I mean? Like I like to do. And they still have a blast.
I don't do that with my strat games. It's pure, let's just play the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people like even love unboxing the stuff that comes in. I mean, there's nothing.
And that's again, there's an anticipation for
my APA cards on the way. They finally got shipped, so I got
awesome.
So I got 1980 on the way. I got the new APA baseball book, and I got a whole bunch of World Series, including 1918. So I'll be playing some old time World Series with that. So and I can't wait, and I hope I enjoy it because if I do, I'll pick up another season here or there for APA baseball. As I'm finally getting into my baseball thing here. In my baseball, my sports replays. So
when I think of supplemental roll, I think of school lunches and getting a roll with butter with my goulash, my green beans, and my illegally fruited Jell-O with a fake whipped topping on it.
But you went back for seconds every time, didn't you?
No,
you didn't.
No. So there's a quick story because we've already run over. One time, I asked for seconds on dessert. It was some sort of gooey s'mores type thing. And so I was second grade or whatever, and they weren't going to tell the kid in the wheelchair no. And so my aide went up and got the dessert, and she says, "You're not supposed to ask." Sometimes on the main dishes, we could go for seconds if we were hungry. And in our elementary school, the cooks were good.
Yeah.
But you were never supposed to do that for dessert. But I got away with it once. But no, you knew that the cherry Jell-O had the grape in it, depending on the size of the goop of what passed for whipped cream. It's like, if that's big, I'm not eating that. Anyway.
Yeah. So you're not supposed to ask for dessert. I get it.
You're not supposed to seconds on dessert. They'll give you one dessert.
We went to a Chinese restaurant the other night. I hadn't been to this place in probably 20, 30 years. And somebody said, let's go here. So we went there. And I was like, I think I'm going to get a soup. Do you guys want to get a soup? And they're like, no, I don't want to get a soup, right? So the waitress looks at me and she goes, no soup for you? I thought it was kind of funny. It was like, yep, no soup for me.
No soup for you.
On that note, let's wrap up episode 120. Here we go. By the numbers, this has been episode 120 of the Digital to Dice podcast here. Yeah, holy cow. Today we talked about the fun factor. We want to know what your fun factor is when you play these games here. So many different ways to play, so many different ways to have fun. There is no right or wrong way, as we always like to say on the show. Actually, there's only right ways. There's only right ways. There's no wrong ways. Yes. That's what I meant to say. Ways to get a hold of us. digitaltodice.com is the website. That's where we park all the shows over on Spreaker. 978-751-DICE. 978-751-3423 is how you can text us. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice is our Facebook group. Ron, I need to go get this apple cider vinegar out of my nose. What are you going to do?
Not think about you flushing out your nose.
Sounds good.
That's a great image.
I'll talk to everybody later.
Bye-bye.